Welcome to our new podcast, In the Hunt, powered by GameForge. Loud. All right, you ready?
I'm ready. I'm not sure.
Welcome to this. Okay. Welcome. He's ready. All right. Welcome to this week's In the Hunt. This is Brian Bailey here with Mark Sweeney as always, and we have a great new topic to discuss today. In the realm of putting, inside of Fuel, we've kind of started to dedicate months to what we're doing. We've kind of said, hey, this month of April is all about putting. So we went ahead and took our podcast in that same direction. But before I give you the exact topic, Mark, what's going on? And I know you've been kind of busy. I think you were in Georgia there for a little bit.
Yeah, I was up in Augusta for the whole week, which is always a long week, but it's cool. You know, it's neat being up there and watching all the excitement. It was pretty fascinating to watch practice rounds where everybody on the golf course was following Tiger. And I think I was on 14 hole when Hovland came through with a couple other guys, and there was like nobody watching him. I'm like, here's a top 5 in the world player, and there's literally nobody watching him. Everybody was tracking Tiger the whole time.
That's kind of cool. So when you're at Augusta, are you allowed to say what do you actually do for work there? Selling like
no,
sandwiches?
I can't actually really say.
Okay. Are you selling sandwiches?
No, I'm not selling. I can tell you what I'm not doing. I'm not selling sandwiches. But I can't really tell you what I'm doing either.
That's cool. That actually makes it more exciting.
Yeah, totally.
Secret is he parks cars for the top 20 players in the world.
I'm a valet.
well, that's cool. And I think how exciting was that to watch? It's kind of interesting to watch the winner of the green jacket 4-putt and still win by 3.
Yeah, that's the position you want to be in, where you can like 6-putt the last hole and still win. I mean, talking about being comfortable coming down, you know, on your last approach shot, being like, okay, I can make a mess of this and I'm still going to win it.
And he kind of did make a mess of it and still won it.
You don't. I think the stat I did once, more than half of all Masters are won by one shot. You know, so it's pretty unusual to come in there with a 4. I don't know, what do you have, a 4-shot lead coming in or something like that?
Yeah, 5-shot, wasn't it?
4 or 5 shots coming down the fairway of 18, and that's got to be a good feeling.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I remember, I can't remember, the couple of the guys on tour tweeted and goes, you should have just gone ahead and 6-putted because you could.
Because you could 6-putt and still win. That's
still win just because you could. Now that would be legendary.
That's a total flex.
that is. I'm dunking on all of you. I just 6-putted 18.
Dunk on your head,
and I still won by 1. But
nice.
well, kind of on the lines of Augusta and kind of as you watch them going around the golf course, the beauty of Augusta is the greens are really the teeth of the golf course. And you can hit really great approach shots, and due to the actual elevation of the greens and the rollouts, you can end up in some really far distances from the hole. So I thought today's topic would be speed control, being able to control speed of the ball on the putting green and kind of how to maximize that for an athlete. I know, I think there's a lot of great systems out there that give you lots of information. The simple formula for speed is what distance divided by time. So I think it's really cool that there's a lot of cool devices out there like a TrackMan, Flight Scopes that'll say, hey, you just hit that putt at 4 miles an hour or 3.5 miles an hour.
Yeah.
But again, I don't find that being very functional in training and for the athletes. So when we talk speed in this podcast, we're going to be talking more about speed of the ball rolling to the hole or past the hole, as well as speed as in the actual movement of the putting stroke, right? How far do you take it back, and in what time manners do you do that? It's kind of throwing that out so people don't get all crazy with us and say, well, speed factors is, miles per hour or inches per feet, or we don't care about that. So we're kind of talking functionality, something that you can use on the golf course and kind of have an understanding when we talk speed here, we're really talking distance past the hole and actually length of stroke and speed of stroke. So I just wanted to throw that caveat before we get going. Cause I've seen
that's a good one. Cause I can go sideways real quick.
Yeah. I've seen some Twitter battles and some online battles, and I'm like, y'all are just arguing the different points. Like you're both making your points.
I've been in a couple Twitter battles in my life.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I tend to stay out of them because it's just largely useless.
Well, you know,
Because you just get so many
sometimes
stupid comments. Like I can't even read the comments because they're just so ridiculous. It's like I'm not burning my mental energy on these kind of comments, you know.
no, yeah, no, I think
You've
like
seen them.
I think the best thing I ever did is I got rid of all social media except for Instagram that we do Game Force stuff. I've canned all of it. I have
Yeah, I
no
mean, I
clue.
rarely look at Twitter, Facebook. I look at Twitter if I have to, you know,
Yeah,
meaning somebody sends me a link and says, "You better look at this."
that's
It's
right.
not on my daily routine.
And she's not a 6 foot blonde.
Exactly, exactly. Well, I'm pretty good at pissing them off. I think so.
Yeah, you a lot of 6 foot blondes are really mad at you for
Yeah,
bullying.
that's a skill I have, I think.
But so again, as we let's parry back to where we were talking about. So again, kind of speed and how does that work? So I think one of the coolest pieces inside of Game Forge, not Game Forge, but inside of Aimpoint the last, oh God, right before COVID. So I guess 4 or 5 years now is we started introducing a speed class. And I've seen great results using that from tour players all the way to, high handicappers. But I don't think the golf industry's done a very good job of understanding how a ball rolls on the green and what those effects are. So what are your thoughts on speed and putting?
Ooh, that's a big topic there. You know, speed I think takes the longest to develop. You know, you can teach somebody to have a good read pretty quickly, and stroke takes a little bit longer also. But you know, by the time we get fairly competitive golfers, their strokes are generally pretty good. You know, by the time you get to the tour level, there's, you rarely see a player that you cringe when you look at their stroke. I find it very rare to see that. I can think of only maybe 1 in 10 years where I was like, how in the world are you on tour? You know, they're generally pretty good. And so really the differentiator is speed control, which is managing arrival speed. And there's a couple different components to that, and one is, the conceptual side is what is the right speed. And I find a lot of people don't have that right in the beginning. You know, what's the difference between short, medium, and long putts? What should your speed be? Number two, how do you manage speed by moving the putter? How do you manage acceleration rates and length and all that to manage speed? And the third is just because putting, you're not on a flat surface all the time, is how does green speed change ball speed and break, up and downhill, grain, all those things. I mean, that's where it gets tough. Downhill on a 3% on the 12 is very, very, very different than downhill 3% on an 8. And that takes some understanding and some training and some trust to be able to, go across different green speeds and understand the kind of the timing of the putt.
No, I agree. And I think what's fascinating too is because people get fixated on, I think the TrackMan stuff's really cool and it gives you the miles per hour. I think they do in mile per hour. And I think a couple of them do kind of feet by inch or feet by second or whatever. But again, I don't think I've ever sat on a putting green with some of the best putters in the world and have them go, should I hit this at 3 miles an hour or 4 miles an hour?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the devices to measure that slow or tough, because if you look at a radar, like if you look at a pitching radar, for pitching speeds in baseball, the ball's gonna be going at least 30 miles an hour. The problem is the ball in putting is going 3 to 10 miles an hour. So you have a very slow moving object that you're trying to pick up speed on, and the radars just really are not designed for that. Second thing you said is you don't really care. Like it's real, like, okay, the ball takes off at 4.5 feet per second. Okay. Like, so what? You know what I mean? Like,
that's right.
Like
now give me 4.6. Now give me 4.4.
And that's what's hard is you don't realize 1 or 2 tenths of a foot per second can have a pretty big effect on how far the ball goes. Like, you're not saying give me 5 miles an hour instead of 4 miles an hour. Yep. You're saying give me 4.2 versus 4, and that's going to be an extra 2.5 to 3 feet of rollout. So it's just unmanageable, I don't think, to think in those terms. I don't really know anybody that does that. There obviously is an actual speed component to balls. The putter head's got to be moving a certain speed for the ball to go a certain distance, but knowing that doesn't matter. I think it's there. I hate to say it, but there's a lot more feel component to understanding this feeling of acceleration and ball speed will make the ball go this far uphill, this far side hill, this far downhill. The timing of the putt, it takes X amount of seconds or beats to get there. How does that change with different green speeds? It's very dynamic, putt to putt, day to day. It's very dynamic. Even, even on PGA Tour, the speeds are never the same every day. I mean, they're similar, but the green speeds are very dependent on weather. So I don't care if you mow them the same, roll them the same, do everything the same day to day. Temperature, humidity, wind, dew point, they all affect green speeds, and those are different every day typically. And I don't know how many players really understand how different green speeds can be day to day just if the humidity changes.
No, I agree. And if you think of, like, again, going back and kind of comparing people to strokes gained to the tour, I think this is always a kind of a double-edged sword, right? Because they do play relatively similar speeds, relatively similar conditions. But then you look at, let's say, a college athlete that literally in the spring golf, you're playing a golf course with a stimp of 8, and then you might go something the next week into a 12, and then you roll something the next week at a 9. So I think a lot of times is, again, your ability to adapt. I think as an amateur golfer is a little more challenging than that of a tour golfer, because the tours try to keep them relatively similar,
Yeah,
but
and they do a good job of that, but they're not the same.
Yeah, they're never the same. But they don't get the gaps that you might get by going to play that member with your buddy in the fanciest country club in town, and all of a sudden you show up and these greens are 13s or 14s and you're used to 9s. Like,
oh yeah, then you're dead.
But I think what's fascinating and kind of some of the stuff that we've learned inside of GameForge on speed is the average leave for really good players. And when I'll let you throw this stat out, this is one of yours, but I've really shaken a lot of players' beliefs on, what that leave value should be when you're putting for birdie, and then kind of and then I think we've talked 10% rule in other videos, but we can kind of hit on that. And then as you're trying to lag the ball or, nestle ball up at distance, what those kind of speed values look like. So can you kind of shed some light, if you're a really good amateur and you want to play professional golf, if I'm at 18 feet, where's my leave if I miss the putt, or even if at 8 feet, what's the difference?
Yeah. I mean, on PGA Tour for birdie putts, the average leave is about 2 feet past the hole, but we're really looking at the leave gets closer and closer to the hole as the putt gets longer and longer. So at 10 feet on tour, it's 1.5 to 2 feet, and at 20 feet, it's more like a foot, and 30 feet, it's 6 inches. And that's when I say average, and I have this conversation all the time about how averages work. If the average leave is 6 inches past the hole, it doesn't mean the bulk of your putts are 6 inches from the hole. It means some are 3 feet long and some are, 2.6, 2 point whatever, 5 feet short, right? So there's a dispersion in there, but the center of mass for birdie putts 20 feet in on the PGA Tour are all past the hole. It doesn't kind of get to the hole until about 40 feet, where you have an equal number of long and shorts, because what they're trying to do at that point, by the time you're lag putting, it's all about proximity. And so you're trying to throw out the big miss, which is, well, if my average is 2 feet past the hole, then my dispersion is going to be anywhere from 2 feet short to 6 feet long. And we want to throw out that 6 foot long miss. So you bring the middle back to the hole. So your misses are kind of 4 feet long, 4 feet short, right? It's all about proximity at that point. But then you get it 20 feet in, it's all about make percentages. And if you're leaving too many short, you're not going to make your 5 to 6 birdies around to win, whether you're men or women's tour. And you're going to have, and if you hit it too firm, you're going to get tons of lip outs. So you got to find the right balance between lip outs. And anybody knows if you start hitting them 3 feet by the hole, a lot lip out, right? So now you're throwing away putts on lip outs and introducing 3 putts because you're hitting it too firm. And that's right. A lot of juniors get it wrong. And so you really have a window. For me, the window is about 6 inches to 2 feet past the hole for anything 20 feet in, and everything should be trained with that mindset, and a lot of it is a mindset, because you get a lot of players who get defensive and they kind of lag their 15 footers up right in front of the front edge of the hole, and they're not going in because they're really terrified of hitting it too far past. And that's great if you want to shoot par, but it's not great if you need to shoot 67, 66.
Yeah. And I think the other fascinating piece is, I think that the tour from 9 to 20 feet, or that 10 to 20 foot zone, what is it? 10% they leave short. So, a lot of drills I do with my better players is, we're going to do this drill working on our in position conversions, and I'm only giving you 1 putt short. So I'll let you leave 1 short, but everything else needs to be pushing the hole. And if not, and if it's not a good putt, if you leave more than 1 putt short, you're not doing your job. They've got to learn on getting the ball to the hole. I hate the never up, never in cliche. Yeah. But for birdie, it's so true.
Yeah, that's 100% true. I mean, tour players 10 feet in, they're leaving 2% short.
Yeah.
That's it, 2%. Right.
Yeah.
And I've worked with a lot of juniors and college players who live a heck of a lot more than 2% short from 10 feet.
They leave
Even some tour
50%
players,
short.
even some tour players, you know what I mean? So it's I find more and more when I train, especially, but now if you just can't do it, in other words, if you just can't get your dispersion small enough. So part of it is dispersion, and dispersion means, well, I'm hitting a 10-footer and I'm hitting it everywhere from 9 feet to 13 feet. Well, that dispersion is too big. So that's usually your accelerations are wrong. You've got different stroke lengths, you have different accelerations. That's too much variance in between putts. In other words, you can't produce consistently the same stroke, which ultimately is to create the same club head speed of impact. That's an issue of how you move the putter, and there's some concept issues there also we can get into. But once you're moving the putter pretty decently, then a lot of it's mindset. And the mindset is, got to hit this ball firm enough so it's going a foot and a half by constantly, and not be afraid of the long one, and not be so conservative that you're just dripping him in the front edge. And I find with good players, there's a huge mindset change in that. And even if you get down to 3 or 4 feet, you're not wrapping into the back of the hole either. Everything 20 feet in, you're trying to kind of hit the same speed.
No, I think that's the part that when you watch them on television, that's the most fascinating part is, the speed of the ball is always getting to the hole, rolling a foot or two past. And again, why do tour players putt so much better than amateurs? Well, because they take advantage of when they have birdie putts, they get it to the hole, they make their fair share. And then at distance, they don't put themselves in trouble. We run 3-putt graphs, and, I start showing players at 11 to 20 feet, your average leave is, 6 to 7 feet. At 11 to 20, and you got a bunch of 3-putts there. Well, there's a reason. We've got a major concept issue of what a good putt is. Like like you shouldn't be averaging 6 feet from the hole. I'm hoping it's 6 feet past, not 6 feet short. But with some juniors, you don't know. You don't know.
And you gotta ask the question, just what are you trying to do? I mean, I'm always doing that. Just what are you trying to do? And someone will tell you something that's correct, but they just can't do it. And some of them will tell you stuff where you're like, no, hold on, bump the brakes here. That is not the right concept.
Well, I think that's a big part of coaching, right? Is being able to ask the questions and go, what are you thinking? Like, what is your thought here? Because again, I can be giving you great information, but if you're internalizing that on a concept that might not be the best, the results might not end up there. So I think a lot of times for coaches, you've got to ask those questions and keep talking to the player and get that, instead of just saying, do X, mechanically, let's work on this or that. You've got to start asking these and go, what is your thought on, how many should you leave short at this distance? How far past are you really going for? Why are we doing this? Like, let them own that and kind of own that. And then, like I said, that ownership will hopefully take them much further than them just kind of reacting and guessing. So we've talked about speed to the hole. 2 feet past inside of 20 feet is a really good kind of goal, early 6 inches out, 10% rule at distance. But I think the more exciting piece, or the piece that people don't ever think about, is how far, like, mechanically inside of the putting stroke, how do I control length of a putt? We're going to assume good contact, because we don't need toe hits, heels, lofts. Okay. Like, we can get into the crazy, but we're going to assume relatively good contact, relatively good face. Right. And so what are the components, or what do you really pay attention to on a player being able to manage the stroke to provide the distance that they need to perform?
The biggest thing that I'm watching in the beginning is just how they move the putter, and is it kind of appropriate? Meaning, I mean, there's different ways to move the putter and create a consistent speed, but if somebody's got a really short jabby stroke, that tends to be less consistent. You rarely see something that's just too long and, quote, decelerating. That's I can't even think of last time I saw something like that. So some of it is just doing assessment, just saying, hey, what are you able to do? How consistent can you be? What is your choice of moving the putter? Do you do that consistently? So sometimes you'll see a player who's nice and smooth, and jabs the crap out of it, or sometimes they're nice and smooth at 10 feet and you get them to 30 feet and they're too short and they're long through and they're hitting at it and they can't get the ball where they're going. And so it doesn't scale properly with longer and shorter putts. And so I'm paying a lot of attention to just what is their how are they choosing to move the putter? First, what kind of consistency does that result in? And if it's not resulting in enough consistency, then it's really kind of getting their motion, their rhythm, their stroke length dialed into a certain range that they're comfortable with and that they can reproduce.
Yeah. I think a lot of times is when I introduce this concept to a lot of players, I worked with a player, single digit handicapper, amateur. He came in, he actually flew in to see me. He's a pilot, so he flies himself. So it's not that fancy,
Nice.
but
Yeah.
he actually flew in to see me, and we had this conversation on speed, and he just kind of, and he was an engineer, and he just kind of looked at me and goes, I had no concept at all to understand that there's a length and time component that allows me to move a ball roughly a certain distance. He goes, his golf world was completely blown up because he goes, I've never thought of it in that fashion. So I was like, so you're always guessing, and your putting stroke looked like that. So one time it'd be really long, Slurpee slow, he'd get a good result. Next putt would be 4 inches back and this huge accelerating stroke through. So he was just reacting, his body was just kind of reacting to what was happening. So we kind of did this, and it was amazing. Within 30 minutes, I could call out literally within a foot, and he could hit that distance just by starting to understand kind of the length of stroke and inside of, and how to move that in time. Because again, I think a lot of people think they can change distance with just length. So, this length, if I pull the putter back 8 inches and it goes 10 feet, well, now hit it 11 feet. Okay, well, I'm just going to add a little length.
I'm going to add 1/10 of an inch to that.
Yeah, no, but that's in their head.
Good luck. Yeah.
Good luck. Good luck with that. You're a robot, huh?
Yeah.
Can we program that in?
Yeah. I mean, I like to think of, different types, how to move the putter is a combination of length and acceleration rate. Right. Yeah. So how long do you take it back? How fast do you accelerate it? So if you think about automobiles, think about cars, how do you accelerate? Are you a sports car? Are you a minivan? Are you a dump truck? Are you a motorcycle? How do you do it? A lot of times when you test people in different varieties, in other words, let's be longer and slower or shorter and quicker, a lot of times they perform the best in a way that they're not currently doing. Like they're like, oh, I like to be short and accelerate and punch it through. And they're like, okay, we'll just lengthen out and smooth out and relax a little bit, swing the putter a little bit more. And suddenly they're like, oh, that feels really good. And my consistency is a lot better out of nowhere. Yeah. You know what I mean? So not that anyone is right or wrong. I mean, you can, the whole idea is you got to get the putter head moving a certain speed at impact. And there's lots of ways to do that. But the whole idea is, how can I do it consistently? How can I adjust to different green speeds? How can I fine tune that down to a 18-inch window? And if you're short and accelerating hard, it's a really hard to control that the distance you're rolling the ball down to, a foot or 18 inches.
That's why there's only one Snedeker.
That's why there's not a whole lot of guys who do that well, to be honest. Count them on one hand, probably.
Yeah, there's not many of them. So the kind of the best in the world, they tend to be, if you think about the strokes at Augusta, those strokes tend to be really, really long and really, really slow.
They tend to slow up for sure. I don't care what anybody says about, how players usually, move the putter timing wise. What I see, and I can't prove it, but what I see is everybody eases up and slows down. The greens there are faster than anywhere else on tour. The slopes are steep. You get a lot of slopes around the holes that are borderline rollaways. Where if you just go a little too far past the hole, it's going 35 feet down like the fifth hole. If you're up on top on the fifth hole and you're just a little bit long up there, it is going all the way to the bottom. And so everything just slows down. You know what I mean? It's like putting on, not a carpet, because carpets run about 10 on the stimp. Don't ask me how I know that, but they do. It's like putting on your driveway. You're not gonna be quick and jabby.
No, you hope not.
If you do, you're going to be terrible.
Yeah. And I think also, if you start to think about that combination of how far I take the putter back and how do I accelerate it in time, for players that tend to move it really short, do you see some trends inside of their stroke? So a player that maybe takes I call it the amateur stroke, right? That takes it back really short, accelerates through. Do you see a couple kind of, as you're observing, what do you see with them? Where are some inconsistencies that you can point out really quickly, like you struggle at this putt or that putt or this distance?
Yeah, they struggle lag putts, slow uphill putts. They can never get the ball there, and then they start just whacking at it, and then suddenly it's going 8 feet too long. Yeah. So I think they struggle on slow putts, so slow greens, long uphill putts. they tend to struggle on, and they tend not to be as consistent as green speeds change.
Yeah.
But they're really, every time I see somebody who's kind of too short and too jabby, you give them a 30-foot uphill putt, and they can't get the ball there the first time.
Yeah.
They just
I like to
can't
put them on
club heads.
put them on a green with elevation, so it actually moves
Yeah.
up a tier, and you go ahead, try to get that within 6 feet. And
Yeah,
they're like,
uphill, up grain, up everything, and it's sticky, and suddenly it's like
they might not get it
short,
up the hill.
short, super long.
Super long,
I mean?
short. But if you give them 20 balls, they'll figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, they'll get it, they'll figure it out, but they're not going to get it as often the first time.
Yeah.
And so I see that's almost without fail somebody who's too short and jabby, like their lag putting is going to really struggle.
What about that short jabby player on close putts? Looking at 6 feet in, saving par birdies you got to make.
Well, yeah, good question. I find that short and jab. I see that most players tend to get quicker on shorter putts. So whatever their normal rhythm is, you put them at 3 feet, and they tend to speed up. And when they speed up, their face rotation tends to change. And more often than not, I see a closing motion when they start getting faster. And so you get somebody who's already fast, give them a high pressure 3-footer, and they get even more fast. And then not always, but more often than not, I see a closing motion, then suddenly they're missing left.
So yeah, the yips.
God, I just cringed when you said that. I just had a shudder through my body.
But usually the majority of players that have the yips have an acceleration issue, right? They tend to not take the putter back very far, and they accelerate through to hit it 4 feet, 5 feet, 6 feet.
They tend to be fast accelerators.
And I also look at it this way. This is the meanness of golf, right? We had a round shaft, and we're trying to put a bunch of forces on a round shaft, and all of a sudden, we can't understand why we have start line issues.
Yeah, I mean, I like to explain putting is pretty simple. Assuming your read's good, you're trying to aim the putter at your target and move it back and through without changing the face, which means without twisting it, largely without twisting it, right? And so you need to create a certain club head speed while maintaining the same face position, right? And you're right, because it's a round shaft. The more you're torquing it, the harder the forces are on that, the more likely it is to twist.
Yeah, if you're not perpendicular to it, you're screwed.
Yeah. So everything with setup and mechanics is basically, we're just trying to get that goal. How do I move the putter back and forward and keep it in the same spot? And how do I create that putter head speed consistently, and then obviously be able to adapt to different conditions? That's the harder part. But if the mechanical motion part of it is, how do I consistently create a certain speed without twisting the face?
Yeah. And
without changing the face orientation.
Yeah. So I just put a video up on Fuel today that's basically kind of what we just talked about on short putts, actually adding length and slowing down time to give yourself a better attempt to make putts. So I actually sat at 5 feet and put a 10-foot length stroke and just moved at a slower time. Move slower in time. Mm-hmm. And I could just sit there and create basically 6 to 7 feet on every putt, where again, if a lot of players tend to get short. So I think, again, the concept of is just because it's a short putt doesn't mean you need to take the putter back 4 inches or 2 inches or 3. Like, you can be longer and play with time.
Yeah. And what people don't realize about the putter, your stroke length, is it's not linear. In other words, it's not for every 1 inch you take it back, it goes a foot, right? The first 5 feet, the putter might go back 6 inches. And then the next 5 feet, it goes back another 4 inches. And the next 10 feet, it goes back another 4 inches. There's a curve to it. And so it doesn't scale linearly. And you see guys on tour making these 2-inch backstrokes and practicing, and, but that's not really what they do. If you watch them at a 5-footer, they're not taking it back 2 inches.
No. And you that is the yips. You take it back 2 inches and try to accelerate. But again, I think a lot of that is golf magazines and commentary, and everything's accelerating. Got to be, it's accelerating, but it's not. I'm not trying to hit it 40 yards.
Yeah. I mean, the putter head's not moving that fast. I mean, a 20-foot putt, it's moving like 6 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I could almost walk that fast. Well, maybe not walk. I'd have to jog a little bit, but it's not a high speed club.
my scooter I drive around Publix goes about that fast.
My Rascal.
I can't walk in a grocery store. I need to drive my little buggy.
Pull liquor off the shelf.
That's right. But I think, again, like I said, I think speed control to me is probably the most fascinating, probably the most misunderstood or undertaught, because again, if you
Totally.
really take it to a player, you have a relatively good stroke. Let's say you aim point, relatively a good read. Golf really comes down to if I can target it and send it at a reasonable speed, I got a really good chance to make. And I think a lot of people don't, I don't, I used to always joke with my players when they came off the putting green, after a tournament, they would never say, when they failed, it was always start line, speed, then read, right? But again, I think a lot of that time is, speed is a factor on read. If you're not using aim point and you don't have a good concept, I think a lot of people blame speed for issues, but you underread, overread. Speed might have been great, but again, you didn't understand the understanding of what it takes to hold a putt. The concept was wrong. So I think a lot of times with read not being very good, I think a lot of people would fall back and say, God, I just couldn't get the speed of the greens right. Well, a lot of that was because you were hitting the low side of the hole and it's running away. And so now what should have been a 1 or 2 foot putt coming back up the hill is now 4 feet, 5 feet.
Yeah.
So that it's a speed factor in the fact that your read was, so again, it's understanding that inside of putting, it's not easy.
No, it's not. It's not easy, and it takes training. And I always tell people, if there's one thing you train in putting every day, go train speed.
I agree.
And I'm very demanding to the point of being, annoying with players when we're training about speed, where I'm like, you've got a 12-foot putt. Don't just hit it to make the putt. Try to hit it with the right speed. So they'll hit it and they'll drip in the front and be like, cool, I made it. Be like, yeah, but that's not really the putt we want to be making. Like, yes, you got away with it, but let's train it the right way, which you need to be visualizing that ball going into the hole a little bit faster than you're seeing right now and get comfortable with that. And a lot of it is just understanding when you're watching the ball roll in the putt in the hole on an uphill putt, it's moving faster than if you're rolling it in on a downhill putt, right? Or a side hill putt. There's a little difference. But the other thing they don't really realize is whether you're hitting a 6-foot uphill putt or a 20-foot uphill putt, if it's going to go a foot past the hole, all those balls are moving the same speed as they approach the hole.
Yep.
They're not moving different speeds, right? And so a lot of it is just burning in what does that speed look like, right? And then figure out for that player, how do you mentally get in the position where you can deliver that? Get comfortable with it's not dripping in, it's going a little firmer, but we don't want to be hitting the back of the cup either. It's got to be moving faster uphill. It's got to be moving faster on slower stems. It's got to be moving slower on faster stems. It's all opposite, right? Just like everything in golf. And a lot of that is just training and watching it and being demanding on yourself to try to create that speed that we want, the ideal speed.
Do you have any, you have any recommendations other than go and see a putting coach? Let's say
not just any putting coach.
There's only like 9 of us in the entire world. No.
Let's go. Well, there's only 9 idiots out there. We're the village idiots. All
that's
all
right.
Group.
So, do you have any good advice for that player that has a speed control issue and maybe struggles with taking the putter back and inside of time or distance? Is there any cool tricks or training methods that you do that you've seen beneficial to help a player gain some of that feel to be able to hit at certain distances?
Yeah, well, I mean, I like our speed mats, obviously, because what you do is you constrain the backstroke length and you constrain how far the ball goes, and then you make the player hit it, and their brain actually pretty quickly figures out the correct acceleration. So you kind of force them to feel the correct acceleration, correct is not quite the right word, but a appropriate acceleration. And once they feel it, and a lot of times it's something they've never felt before, once they feel it, then it's really more about reproduce that feeling. It's not take the putter back 10 inches and accelerate at a certain rate and make contact at 4.5 feet per second. It's what does that feel like? Okay, do that again.
Yeah.
Make that feeling again.
No, I think that's great because I see a lot of players, again, when you put them, you give them that confines of saying, here's a way to move the putter. It might not be perfect for you, but here's a way. Can you create that? And again, it's pretty fascinating to watch. The majority of people can intuitively pick up on what that time. I always say the human body is really good at time. Like, yeah, we understand time, we understand where the sun is. A lot of people can wake up without an alarm. Like, we understand time. So our ability to understand time is really, really good. There's always the player that's not, you get the true artist that, has never been on time for anything, AKA every PGA Tour on Earth player on Earth that says meet me at 2 o'clock for a putting lesson. Anyways,
Yeah, they're not gonna be there at 2 o'clock. I
no,
guarantee you that.
they struggle with time. But I think again, starting to move that putter and kind of a trick that I like to do with some players if they can't, basically we're saying, hey, bring the putter back this length. If they can't figure out a time, I've played syllable games with them, which work out really cool. So give me a 1-syllable word, dog. Can you take the putter back to this line and in your head, say the 1-syllable word, and now say a 2-syllable word and slow you down. Now I go 3-syllable, 4-syllable. I don't know 4-syllable word, but I'm sure they exist. They're way above my pay grade. But again, I'm much better at dog and donut. 1 and 2. After that, I'm toast.
I kind of have to go to 2 words to get 4 syllables. I feel like
I just say donut twice. donut.
Oh, I'm struggling to think of one now. If I think of one before we finish, I'm going to say it.
Oklahoma.
Oh yeah,
there we go.
Beat me.
Virginia's 3.
West Virginia.
we don't like to say that word. I'll give you some good West Virginia jokes later.
Ding, ding.
But I think again, like, any tricks like that. And what I like about the syllables is you don't need a metronome. You don't need any tools. And it's something you can take to the golf course. And I have a couple players that really struggle with, in the beginning. So they'll actually be on a downhill putt. Let's say they're a 2-syllable, it takes me 2 syllables to take to the right length at 10 feet. They know what the length is. They're just struggling with time. But now it's a downhill putt. They might add a syllable, do a 3-syllable word. So they move the putter slower. And that's the way that they can start to say, this is like a downhill putt is more of a 3-syllable, whatever. So I think it's fascinating that you can manipulate time very well. If you understand the concept, which again, most players that I run into don't understand that concept.
Yeah, no, it's the brain is spectacular at figuring it out. You don't have to coach somebody through it. Just say, like I said, you constrain the backstroke length and the distance, and they will figure out the in between pretty darn quickly.
And but yeah, so I think speed is a factor that, again, kind of like Mark said, I think it's the most important piece in your journey of learning golf. Now, granted, everyone I ever see get taught, or, they're always working on mechanics of face, start line.
And but equipment. They always go start line and equipment, it seems like.
Yeah. Well, those are the magic fairies, easy pixie dust. Let me change my putter because it's going to have more ROI, and it's
because there's a new model out this year.
It's 8 kilograms heavier than whatever, you're just sitting there.
Yeah. Kilograms.
I'm putting with
I'm 8 kilograms heavier, but
that's right. This putter is 4 stones.
Exactly.
For our British listeners. But again, that concept, I think a lot of times, again, it's I think start line and equipment is the easiest and the most understood by a lot of teaching pros. And it's something that the player feels that they can control. And that kind of the 2 outliers is speed and read, or these little, these are the fairy dust. I don't quite get it, but if I get really good with my start line, I'll make more putts.
Yeah, I see that a lot.
I'd much rather say I'm going to be the best speed player on earth, and I can back my way into a better face.
Yeah, well, and I tell players, I'm like, your goal is to be the best speed player out there. If you're the best speed player out there, you can be okay at start line and okay at read, and you're gonna be a good putter,
Yeah, because you definitely won't be giving away shots at distance.
No, for sure. Now, how do you feel about equipment as far as ball roll? Because we see a lot of stuff about skid and roll and how fast can you get the ball rolling and launch conditions. How do you feel about that for performance?
I would say as long as the player is not launching it, 3-4 feet down the green before it hits the turf, or if they're not hitting it dead into the turf and having it jump up in the air 3 or 4 feet. Right. I think that's kind of like miles per hour. I think it's a cool piece. It's something as a coach, kind of as you get higher up, that's important. Maybe you can maximize. I think, again, a lot of that is just, it's not that important.
Right.
The ball is going to have some sort of skid or backspin or some sort of spin before it actually hits true roll at 6 inches ish. give or take, on a pretty well launched golf ball. So, if I do it better at 5.75 inches opposed to 6.25 inches, is it that big a deal? Probably not. But, to me, it's get rid of the outliers. I had a player the other day that kept telling me he wanted a putter fitting. My loft is terrible. My ball keeps launching in the air, launching in the air, launching in the air. And I'm like, it's not launching, dude. You're pounding it into the dirt. You're coming down so steep. You're pounding it into the dirt and it's jumping in the air. So that ball launching is not a loft issue. It is you're hitting big ball really hard with little ball.
So she was probably thinking deloft, and was making it worse.
Yeah,
and worse
she was going the opposite direction. So she was trying to take away loft. So she was getting steeper and steeper and just making it worse and worse. But again, to me, these are the engineering battles, right? I think this is like with this driver. It's the same thing. These are the engineers. With the ROI, we can improve roll by 32%. What does that mean? An inch. Or with a driver, we get a trampoline effect of 42% better than it was 7 years ago. What does that equal? 2.1 yards. Right? It is a factor. But again, as a coach and as a player, I wouldn't be spending a bunch of time. When we're talking speed, as long as it's launching relative, like you said, you can see it. If the ball's launching goofy, there's tons of monitors. I'll give you all the information you need about it. But again, I think it's just I don't think it's enough to worry about unless there's a problem. I'm not hearing Tiger Woods looking at his caddy with, on a downhill putt to win the Masters going, how much do you think this thing's going to skid?
Yeah, I've only seen a couple situations, especially on longer putts where they're getting balls getting airborne because they're flipping their hands. Yeah. You know what I mean? But kind of 20 feet in, I mean, to me, you're just trying to shave off maybe a tiny little bit of performance in there. But my feeling is usually that is not the main cause of you underperforming. No. You're not underperforming because it's skidding 5% too long. You're underperforming because your reads are wrong, or your speed is all over the place, or you shut the face every third putt or whatever. If those are all good, okay, fine. Maybe we'll look at your launch conditions and try to tweak them a little bit, but all those other things better be in line awfully well before I start diving into that.
Yeah. And I think equipment, that's a setup piece, possibly. And that could be an equipment piece. Like, you should be putting with a 2 degrees. But again, to me, those are more of I understand all the other components. My concepts are good. I'm very skilled at starting to control these pieces. Now, again, it's, what does it take to get to that next level? It's, once again, what's my launch angle? What is, and again, I think the fascinating piece is the really good for an elite player, like an Olympian, that's what was that one where they ski and they shoot at the same time? Like that gun is set up completely. Yeah. They're completely set up for what they need to do. Right. The next shooter might take his gun, shoot it and not be very good, but after 1 or 2 shots will adapt to it and be fine. But again, so I think as you get better and better, tweaking equipment to what it needs to be done is really important. But, for the majority of us listening to this, if you're sitting down talking skid at the bar after a round, it's more so that your buddy got really drunk and did something to himself back in the woods. Like the skid is a completely different reason, right? It's not on the putting green. He had way too many beers. So that devolved poorly.
Wow. You went there.
You wouldn't have gone there, would you? Oh, well, whatever.
Oh, well.
But I think a lot of these concepts for coaches, it's we forget about making our players better and give them a bunch of information that they don't need. I don't think a lot of players really care if it skids, longer, shorter, more or less, if they're holding putts, if their performance is hitting it. I think we're getting in the minutia of coaching. It might be really cool to say, I improved this player's skid by, okay, how many putts did they make inside of 8 feet?
Yeah. Our answer is always, you're making enough putts. I don't care.
Yeah, that's right. You can skid all you want.
5 in putting on tour. I don't care.
Right.
Leave it. Don't talk to me. Just leave everything.
Yeah, don't. Yeah, and again, you're one of the best putters in the world. Do not change your putter.
God almighty, how many times I've had that conversation.
But the guy told me if I roll this, well, no, what he told you is they're going to make money because they want you to win. And they say, look, you won with the brand new.
Yeah.
It's the Callaway.
The minute they go for a fitting as the manufacturer, you know they're coming home with a new putter in their hand.
Oh, that's a given. And they might come home with 3 of them.
Yeah, exactly.
No, yeah, they want to make sure that you have the right equipment at the right time so they can, hopefully you'll win and they can make a commercial out of it.
Yeah.
But
no doubt.
All right. So I think the skid really brought this to a closure. And for those that haven't visually come up with that yet, you will one day.
Let it go.
If you're a young junior, you don't understand it now. After college, you will. So is there anything you want to finish on speed and kind of that concept of what that takes to be better at controlling a ball on a putting green?
No, but I'd like to point out the fact that 2 of the last 3 Masters winners had aim-point caddies.
Coincidence?
I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there in case people aren't didn't notice. Just saying.
Is that causality or is that?
I don't know if that's.
Is there a correlation there?
There's definitely a correlation, but I'm sure there are people who say correlation is not causation, but it certainly didn't hurt them. That's for sure.
It doesn't hurt.
For all the crap I got the week before Masters, it went away real quick on Sunday, didn't it?
Yeah.
Funny.
I guess you should have dropped your aim point towel.
Yeah. Anyway, we will continue to see more of that because my phone's been blown up with a lot of tour caddies.
It's kind of funny that the maturation of that. A lot of caddies had nothing to do with it. Now that you've taken away their books, they're looking for that advantage.
Yeah, I mean, 10 years ago, nobody would talk to me. 10 years ago, they were like openly aggressive and calling me an idiot on Facebook.
Well, there's still one of them.
I mean, I'm still an idiot, but they're not. They want to learn aim pointing. I think.
Yeah, I think DJ's brother kind of reset the bar on that one, didn't he?
Well, I tell you, the interesting dynamic that I'm seeing now is that I think historically players either read their own putts or occasionally, if they weren't sure, they'd call in their caddy, right? But now what you're seeing, which is a new dynamic on tour, is the player and the caddy, whether it's Scheffler or DJ or other players, they're both reading every putt and comparing notes. It's not like caddy leave the guy alone unless he asks you. They're both going through the process. They're both reading their putts, and it seems to be pretty darn effective, to be honest. Like it's not something I necessarily would have predicted 2 or 3 years ago, but that's that teamwork of here's my read, what's your read? Okay, cool. Player can pick a line and hit it. Seems to be working really well with some of those player caddy combinations.
Yeah. I think it just gives you confines, right? If we're both within a relatively, I guess,
both
if you're
within a couple
me,
inches, go.
Yeah, we're good. Let's roll with it. But, if it's something I see 4 inches and you're telling me it's 18, maybe we need to sit back and let me go take another quick look at this.
We got to sort that out. Exactly.
We need to sort this one out.
Yeah, exactly. So, and those combinations of players and caddies they're having a lot of success. They're winning a ton of money. I always said I liked it better when the player just owned it. The player just owns the read and does it. But, I think like with DJ's situation, they felt like his brother was better at it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that allows the player to just stick with the process they're comfortable with and have the caddy kind of put them in those confines. Like you're talking about, here's your rails. It needs to be between this spot and this spot. Pick what you like and go. Yeah. But it better not be outside those two, that range.
Well, it gives back to an aim point clinic. I don't care how you get the number, just get the number.
Just get
right. Whether it's me doing it or if I'm paying this guy 10%, like I need to get, as long as I get the number, and I'm comfortable in that read. I think again, I think more and more caddies and I think more players will, they'll continue to put aim point in their back. Like I said, I think it's like I see Koepka now doing it all the time.
Yeah.
Rory putting his feet on stuff here or there.
Yeah, I mean, Cam Smith puts his feet on everything. Yeah. He doesn't always hold his fingers up, but he puts his feet on everything, and he's a damn good putter.
That dude can putt.
That dude can flat putt. His numbers as players were stupid good.
Yeah, Freebird, man. That's a great look.
Freebird. Yeah, we talked Cam. We talked Cam back in Australia when he was a teenager, when he was like 15 or something like that. Back when, way back in the day, he learned the basics of aim point.
I always find it funny during the TV coverage. You just kind of look in the background and you always see people straddling lines. You might not know who it is, but you're always seeing feet straddling lines and all that. And like I said, that has never been done before.
Yeah, and I mean, in the ANWA, the women's amateur, saw a bunch of girls doing it who I wasn't even aware knew aim point. I saw it all over the place.
That's cool. So, like always, go out and get your aim point lesson. It's the start of the golf season.
Make your life easier.
Time to learn it. And we also have speed classes inside of that, so you can improve your speed as well. Now, granted, it's harder to find a aim point coach that'll teach speed. However, we do teach it.
True. I teach it every lesson. I teach speed. I never have a lesson that I don't teach speed on.
I agree. I think I've helped more players with the speed component than the read component's huge, but I think that speed component is just as equally important. Because again, once you marry good speed and good read, man, game gets fun.
Yeah.
So, all right. So
we're
going to exit out of here. Make sure you come find some of our content out at Fuel, videos.mygameforge.com. We have a ton of videos. Come join us there, as well as anywhere. Continue listening to our podcast, Anchor, iTunes, blah, 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 Spotify. I think it's even on Amazon now. So keep following us there, and we look forward to bringing you more information in the future.
Cool. Thanks.
Later. This has been a Fuel production.